Sadly, if all you watch is corporate media, well, don't know why you would, unless of course you enjoy being lied to, you likely didn't hear this little narrative breaking story. A few weeks ago on August 17th, after more than a year of painful litigation, the South African High Court forced its government to release the original 2021 vaccine contracts. A court that actually sides with the people? How so un-Canadian? Now the public can take a peek behind the Iron Curtain and see the brilliant deal their government officials negotiated with the saints at Pfizer. No more speculating. South Africans have got the unredacted Pfizer manufacturing and supply agreements, and so do we. The newly disclosed contract between Pfizer and the Republic of South Africa is dated March 30th, 2021, just a mere 4 months after the vaccine rollout started in Canada. For some odd reason, both the South African government and Pfizer vehemently opposed releasing the contract. However, that didn't stop a determined South African citizens group who spent well over a year and countless dollars forcing its release. They were fought every step of the way by the government and Pfizer, ironically, with taxpayer dollars. They say when it comes to contracts, the devil's in the details, and this one has Satan's name written all over it. I put a link in the notes section to the agreement, but right now I'm going to focus on section 5.5, titled Purchaser Acknowledgement, which reads as follows. Purchaser acknowledges that the vaccine and materials related to the vaccine and their components and constituent materials are being rapidly developed due to the emergency circumstances of the COVID-19 pandemic and will continue to be studied after provision of the vaccine to purchaser under this agreement. Purchaser further acknowledges that the long-term effects and efficacy of the vaccine are not currently known and that there may be adverse effects of the vaccine that are not currently known. So, the purchaser, the government of the Republic of South Africa, was told in no uncertain terms that Pfizer, based on their own admission in writing here, had no idea what the injections might do or might not do in the long run, or whether they would even work at all, and if shit were to hit the fan, well, the South African government would be the only ones covered in it. How can I draw such a conclusion? Well, in section 5.5's first sentence, Pfizer admitted it hadn't even yet finished studying the vaccine's components and constituent materials. Think about that for a moment. Churn that around in your mind and poke at it from every vantage point. How does that compare to all the public messaging from Health Canada, public health officials, Justin and his posse, and of course, the CBC, and now, let's not forget, our esteemed physicians. Now, I'm not an English major, but seems to me Pfizer was saying, look, we're not 100% sure about these vaccine things, so buyer beware. And South Africa said, no problem, where do we sign? I'm a fan of the law of contradiction, which states that contradictory positions cannot both be true in the same sense at the same time. So, while in its confidential legal agreements, Pfizer was saying they weren't totally sure what the shots included, publicly, the citizens were assured that the injections were the most studied vaccines in history, as well as safe and effective. Just how effective? In the beginning, we were told 95% effective. Now, continuing on in section 5.5, we come to two different disclaimers. The first disclaimer expressly says that South Africa agreed that the long-term effects and efficacy of the vaccines are not currently known. Not currently known? Does that sound like the sales pitch you were given? Hey, at Pfizer, we have no idea what it's going to do to people or whether it even works. Do you recall this little inconvenient truth being mentioned any time during the end of 2020 and the beginning of 2021, when first responders and healthcare workers throughout Canada were doing their civic duty, or anything prior to the mandate starting to roll out? I don't recall Herr Trudeau saying anything about unknown long-term effects. Did Theresa Tam ever say the long-term effects and efficacy were unknown? Did anyone in charge ever say that? The second disclaimer may be the most deplorable of all. On behalf of its citizens, without their informed consent, the South African government accepted that there may be adverse effects of the vaccine that are not currently known. Big Brother always knows best, so don't worry. So let's put it all together. Combine the two sentences. And what you get is Pfizer saying they don't fully understand what's in the injections and what it's ultimately going to do to the people. And if something bad, heaven forbid, happen, it's not their responsibility. Sounds like a bargain to me. Once again, I'm not a contract expert, but I can't imagine Section 5.5 is standard provision in a government contract for goods and services, no matter what the emergency. I mean, don't purchasing contracts guarantee performance clauses? Don't they have those? Imagine the South African government were buying electric cars from Tesla, and Tesla's contract said, we don't know whether these cars will work, and they might even explode and take down the power grid when you plug them in. Who in their right mind, or even left for that matter, would sign such a contract? Not fair? You can't include those masking still, of course. They may actually sign it. Of course, just when you thought it couldn't get any worse, surprise! Section 8 of the contract is titled Indemnification. It says that if Pfizer is ever sued by anyone for any reason because of the injections, then South Africa must pay for Pfizer's complete defense and then pay any judgment if Pfizer loses. Sounds like a winner to me. Now let's walk this out. Since South Africa is essentially made up of its own citizens and their tax money paid for the vaccines, the contract basically says citizens must pay for any potential injuries that occur as well to fellow citizens. With friends like this in government, who needs enemies, right, citizens? Following this logic even further, since South Africa agreed the injections might not work and agreed Pfizer wasn't guaranteeing that they wouldn't hurt people, South Africa cannot even claim it was fraudulently induced into the contract, duped for that matter, or that Pfizer has provided a defective product. Seems like Pfizer's negotiators ran circles around the government ones. This might explain why governments worldwide are sticking to the safe and effective narrative, because if they didn't, they might have to pay for potential massive claims. You couldn't conceive a more losing for citizens and more winning agreement for Pfizer if you tried. All the incentives are completely perverted. How on earth could this happen? Simple. Executive authority and government secrecy. Emergency executive authority meant that rank and file legislators, the downtrodden, the basic simple MPs, MLAs, whatever, were kept out of the loop. I'm guessing that had this contract been debated in South Africa's Congress, it never would have been approved, like in Canada, eh? Second, official secrecy. Keeping the Pfizer's agreement terms confidential allowed the executive health authorities to agree to anything, even something this one-sided, because they never faced public scrutiny or outcry and never thought they would. Citizens trusted their government officials and assumed that the contract was carefully negotiated and included normal buyer protections and provisions. I'm guessing this is what passes for informed consent these days. If they did it once, they likely did it again and again. I would bet Elon Musk's money that it's very probable that every Pfizer contract in the world includes the same protective provisions or some close variation of them. Which leaves two obvious questions. Did government lawyers in South Africa know how one-sided in favor of Pfizer these contracts were? I mean, even a science denier like me can read and understand it just fine. So if they knew and recommended it, why didn't sane health authorities obviously override the lawyers and refuse to sign? And if the lawyers didn't recommend it, then Why did health authorities override them and sign? Either way, therein lies the real question. Why did they sign? And finally, what motivated government officials to sign such a one-sided deal? A long time ago, I saw a bumper sticker on the back of a van. It said, "Gas, grass, or ass, no one rides for free." And now, thanks to the South Africans, we're one step closer to finding out who got paid and with what. Anyway, I do appreciate you watching. Thank you very much. As mentioned, I put a link in the notes section. You can also follow me in my Rumble and my Locals account. If you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, please do so. Also, you can follow me on Twitter at Camera612, and I will see you next time.